Going?
How's everyone doing? We started talking a couple of things. Nothing is falling apart, that kind of deal. But yeah, this is going on, and I have a very interesting person here with me today, Mr. Andrew Price. Andrew Price
G'day,
himself.
g'day.
Mr. Blender Guru. How's it going,
Yeah,
man?
self-proclaimed blender guru. Yeah.
Blender Guru. Hey, you know what?
You know what's funny? I originally found I was going through some old documents, and I found like these old notebooks, and then inside I was brainstorming names for the Blender channel. This was like 10 years ago, and it was like Blender Frog, Blender Man, Blender Boy, and then I wrote Blender Guru, and then in question marks I wrote too cocky question mark. I was like,
Wow.
and then I just went with it. I guess I didn't mind the cockiness. Yeah.
You know, it could be, it probably, if I named my channel Photoshop Master, it would probably be cocky for first couple of thousand, subscribers, and depending on the quality of the content you produce. But then, you get the
But it forces you to rise up as well, because you can't put out like a shitty video or something, because then you know people are going to be jumping down your throat.
I know, right? You're basically the expectation
Up as well.
raise all the time is like, no, you cannot drop the ball anymore.
Yeah,
With that
that's
name?
right. I know.
But that's interesting. You wrote your names for the channel before starting the channel. That's pretty interesting. I had this.
How'd you come up with the name Art Cafe?
Yeah, I just sat down I want to start a podcast. How am I gonna call it? Oh, Art Cafe is pretty interesting. Let's just call it that. I just didn't.
First one straight out of the gate.
About it, yeah. Yeah, I had
It does make
ideas.
sense though, because it's like you do casual conversations with artists, like it was a cafe or something.
Yeah, pretty much. That was the idea, right? I was thinking.
Yeah.
Actually, my thinking process was this. I was thinking, there's one thing I really like, which is coffee. Coffee is pretty much the number one drug that everyone is using around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's art. If you combine those two, it's a good selling point. You think about coffee? Oh, Art Cafe.
Yeah. Right.
Nah.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking that way. I actually listened to one of the audiobooks about business, relating business ideas with mundane things that basically stick around. When people think about that thing, they will think about your business immediately, right? And it's a marketing tactic. But
Okay.
I read it when I already had 40 episodes in, I was like, oh, actually it worked out. That was never my intention. Yeah, I was thinking, it's going to be, you go to coffee shop to hang out and talk with people, but primarily, you go to get a coffee first to begin with.
Yeah.
But you go to hang out. So to me, I started just to hang out with my friends, and then it quickly went to interviewing people and talking about topics, and then just relaxing and just doing whatever,
Nice.
just having conversation with people I'm interested to talk with, finding interest in specific topics that those, guests would cover, or just having fun and chat, because sometimes you want to do that too. That's how it started. Why did you start your channel though? What was the
Oh
thought
yeah.
process?
Yeah. So basically, I finished high school and I didn't go to university. I went straight into the job market. But because I graduated with really bad grades, so here where I live in Queensland, Australia, we have what's called an OP score. So when you graduate, you get a score from 1 to 25.
Right.
1 being the best, 25 being the absolute. It's actually harder to get a 25 than a 1. But anyways, I ended up with a 19 overall.
Wow.
So my parents had extremely high hopes for me.
And you're disappointed.
Because, yeah, so like the first jobs that I did were like, you know, the absolute bottom of the barrel you can think of, like construction laborer, like literally picking up rocks, moving them over there. I was cleaning portaloos, worked in like a fish freezer place, like throwing fish around, just like any like jobs that required 2 arms and 2 legs. That's the sort of job that I was doing. I did checkout. I was like a grocery doot that thing. And then, but in the evenings I was doing 3D. So I would go home and I would learn Blender. And this would have been back in 2006. I was getting into it. I started 2003. Yeah, and anyways, I really wanted to get a job in 3D. That was, you know, my dream was to work at Pixar someday. And of course, my parents, like, good luck with that one, OP19. Go back to breaking rocks. So I remember I even had the phone book out one day, and I would just go through and I found, like, any visual studio design place, and I call them up and I'm like, hey, is there any work? And they're like, nah, not for you.
Not for you specifically.
Not for you specifically. You are desperate, I can tell.
Quick question. Before you go further, how many of those places asked you for your degree?
Oh, I can't remember. But although actually in Australia, like these were not top places. These were like companies that were like structured and traditional, and so they probably would be more likely to ask for something that is completely irrelevant to the job, which is what degree do you have?
Do you know Excel?
Yeah, exactly.
Are you proficient with Microsoft Word?
Yeah, that's right. Stuff like that.
3D artist, you have to do spreadsheets.
Yeah. How many softwares do you have in your software category? That's not a lot. That kind of thing. But anyway, so from there I thought like, okay, well, I'm never going to get hired at one of these places, but I'd heard of people online, you know, just taking gigs, doing jobs for like $100, $300 here or there. And I thought like, yeah, I could do that because I'm, you know, the internet gives you access to the world of people that need gigs done, so I could do some freelancing.
Yeah.
And so I thought, what's the best way to get known? I thought, make tutorials. So that was where I started brainstorming the name, came up with Blender Guru, and then I made my first tutorial, which was how to model a car tire, because it was this method that I figured out to like you model each individual tread of the tire, and then you use an array, and then you like loop it around itself, and then you make this tire. And like back in the day, like there's very few like Blender tutorials, and yeah, I put this out and people liked it, and then I went to like a marketing course. My dad bought me a like this marketing guru, this guy in Australia, this internet marketing guy. So I went to his course and he had a look at my stats. I think I'd been running it for about a year at that time, and he had a look at my stats. He's like, holy crap, you're getting a lot of views. I think I had like 50,000 people on the email newsletter at the time, and he's like, you should just make a product. Yeah.
That's a lot.
It was pretty good back in the day too. But then anyways, what did I do next? Yeah, so I made a product. And the first product I made was a PDF, and I called it the wow factor. And it would teach you how to do like compositing effects, like a lens flare or like a depth of field, like how to do that in Blender.
Right.
I sold it. The price was $47 for the ebook. Sounds high, probably was high. But yeah, it made heaps of money, like a lot more than you would think. Because I followed that guy's marketing advice, like build up hype, tease out the content before, get it to your email list. And so when I actually released it, I made like 20,000 in the first day.
Wow.
And then yeah, it was 50,000
pretty impressive.
by the end of the month. Yeah. Oh, and sorry, I've skipped over a point. So at some point, I did get my first freelance gig because my tutorials were getting out there, and it was for like doing some tire commercial, like this smoke sim and a tire commercial. And I did it, and I hated it because I realized like this whole time I was chasing the ideal job of being a freelancer, and then I did it for the first time, and I realized that actually it's not fun because you're not the boss anymore. You're doing what somebody else tells you to do. And I realized my whole enjoyment of 3D was that I could make whatever I wanted. So it shot my dreams down. And it was then that I went to the Blender conference in Amsterdam that year in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom, the head of Blender, was like, just so you guys know, there's a lot of money to be made in training because everybody keeps coming to me asking for training courses and training material, and I don't have anything to recommend them. So if any businesses out there want to make some training, it's a good idea. And I'm like, I'll write a book. And that was the ebook. So, yeah.
Nice.
That's the story that you didn't ask for, but I did.
No, it's good. It's good to know because, you know, I know about Blender not that much really. It just really started. I knew that the software existed for a while. I remember having discussions about Blender way back when I was still at Crytek. See, you went like from humble beginnings of working in grocery stores and, you know, having a regular, you know, 9 to 5, and you hated it. I started the same. I was supposed to be, you know, I was getting degree to become an electrician.
Yeah.
I fucking hated it, dude. I want to kill myself at the university. It was just so bad. It was just so boring. And like you had exams all the time, like pointless mathematical shit, you know. And as a side job, I was just basically a janitor. I was cleaning hospitals, you know.
Get out!
Places
Wow.
like that. Yeah, it was crazy. You know those hospital
What year was
toilets?
this?
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, God.
That was 2000. From 2000. I dropped out like after 7 months in college.
Okay.
So that was let me think. That was 2003, 2004. It was like
Okay. Yeah.
end of 2003, beginning of 2004, because right after that first semester, or like the second semester, I just dropped out and went to started working in the industry. Because I was like freelancing before, like I was trying to grab like any kind of freelance job. But as a janitor, I worked as a janitor since high school. I think like in the middle of the high school, that's where I started working. I worked as for almost a year, I think. Or it was that actually, I guess it was at the end of the high school. Just, you know, my family was super poor. Like I had to work in order, like, hey, you want to get anything, you just have to make money, you know, like you have to actually earn it. Like we're not gonna get you anything. So it was like, I've entered the job market pretty quickly, and I've done things that I just didn't want to do, but I had to.
Right.
And then once I found like you can actually make money doing art, I just dived into it like right away. I guess for me it just turned out to be different because I went to a job market I went to working in video games, and it just stayed that way. And then eventually progressed to film and freelance and all that kind of stuff like later, like very, very late in my career. But it started with quite opposite, you know. And I thought like this is the best thing ever.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
You know, being my own boss, but working for like a big studio, you know, doing those nice games and, you know, getting notoriety of having your name attached to a project.
Yeah.
You know, in hindsight, it's awesome, but it's not. You know, you work on 3-4 projects, and all of it just becomes the same. So, yeah. So for you,
I can imagine it would the what do you call it? Not the gimmick, the novelty. The novelty would wear off pretty quick, right?
Yeah.
You do one project, you see your name in the credits at the end of the film, and then you go, "That's it."
Yeah, that's how. You know, when there are moments where you see your work being translated into, like, if it's a video game, you see the environments you design or characters you design. You know, if it's a film, it feels even, especially for the first few films you work on, like it feels, oh my god, like that's, dude, I drew it.
Right.
I made this model. Holy shit, it's there. it feels that way. It's great, but you know, like you work on the project, like for the first month, you're gonna be really excited. I've been saying this many times already, I think, but I can say it all the time because it's true. Like you work on it, you get excited, and then you have to do the same task over and over and over and over and over, and there's a point in which it just feels like, oh, we're just doing another version of the same thing, you know? Because normally when you work in a studio, you get that, you know, you usually get attached to a specific thing. They're not gonna ask you to sketch one thing and then move to another like right away. It's not like I have to finish my amazing piece and then once it's done, I can move on. No, it doesn't work that way. That amazing piece is going to be 1% of your work. 99% is going to be bullshit that you will never ever show because it's just so bad. You know?
Damn.
That's the reality that no one wants to talk about, I guess. And, you know, I remember when I was learning matte painting, like my perception of matte painting was always those beautiful landscapes, Lord of the Rings, you know? And
Yeah. That's what I think too.
Oh, yeah, and I spoke with friends. I made some friends at Blizzard, you know, the cinematics team. You know, I spoke with Jonathan Berube. I spoke with Matthias Verhassel, Levi Petterfee when he was still working there, and all of them was like, dude, it's not what you think. You know, we don't do any of that. Like we do bullshit work most of the time, you know. And that's Blizzard, where they do like those fantastical paintings, you know. But most of it is really, it's not really that. Like it's faking things that you think are there, but they aren't. That's what it really is, and it's just a grueling, very technical work that you need to kind of go through, you know. So that was like a shattered dream.
Let me ask you a question, because
ahead,
I don't work in the industry, unlike most of the people on your podcast. This would be a change of pace for your viewers if they're wondering, who is this guy? Let me check out his portfolio. Like, oh, okay, he's a Blender guy. Yeah, I'm curious. Okay, so you're talking about like the work that you do in the industry is it's a lot more tedious and it's not as fun as it looks. When I looked on your portfolio, you had so I just saw Ghost in the Shell the other day. Loved the visuals. The visuals were amazing. And especially like that scene, and then I saw in your portfolio, it was that scene. The porcelain mask of that Japanese...
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. What's their name? What do you call it?
Genoid, it's a like basically geisha, you know?
Geisha, robotic geisha, that's right.
Exactly.
And then I saw that you made it. Okay, so on that specific thing, that maybe sounds to me like what you imagined matte painting is, right? Like the beautiful landscapes. To me, it's like you made this awesome piece. Maybe, what are some of the realities of that piece, as an example?
Okay, so Ghost in the Shell was a very different project. let's put it this way. Because first of all, it's a fucking Ghost in the Shell, dude. If you're a fan of the manga and the anime, I'm like the big fan of the 95 Mamoru Oshii version, you know? I like that more. The TV series don't jive with me at all. You know, I'm more into that, more into Akira, you know, Studio Ghibli work. Like, it's almost like looking at film and thinking Kubrick and Coppola, you know, instead of Michael Bay and all the other flashy stuff. Like very traditional stuff.
Right.
So when you're a big fan of the franchise and you get to work on it, and then your director is telling you, hey, like, I trust you to do the best work and try to make as much as you can from the original material. I'm gonna give you feedback because it's after all my film, and when I, you know, get some of my own vision in it too. But pretty much it was like, I do, it goes, basically, you know.
You what, sorry?
I would do something and it goes. It's just there.
It goes. Right.
I wouldn't have any changes almost. Like the geisha stuff. The way it worked is I've designed a lot of, you know, sort of anchor points in the movie, and then my friend Ash joined and he designed a lot of like city stuff as well, and quite a few others. Like we actually worked together on vehicles. And the way it works, like I would create a sort of like almost like a vision, what it would be. I had my Ghost in the Shell books pretty much all the time with me, which is like, how those shapes are made in the original, you know? I think I watched the film like another 10 times during the production.
Yeah.
But that was, you know, it's a completely different experience when you're pretty much having a free hand to design things, and then you have a team of really talented people that follow that as a template, and then, you know, they add their their own touches, you know, that kind of stuff. They had a really talented team over at W.I.P that did quite a few. They took that concept of the geishas, and they just made it like awesome, you know. They just polished all the edges, you know, produced it to be what it was supposed to be. On geisha specifically, it was, you know, I was working with Rupert and the costume designer, so I would have like a lot of, you know, back and forth phone calls with those guys. And we would just discuss pretty much a lot of details, especially with the costume. Like, you need to discuss those things because they have to be made. And then they ended up like using like this. I think they've created like proprietary printing technique, scanning and printing technique for the costumes specifically, so that the stuff that they wanted to have there was possible. So that was like, see, when you see that project, it is kind of like this, like, I think matte paintings are this, and it kind of works that way, right? But when you see like any other film, or, you know, when you, let's put an example of The Last of Us, right? I worked on that game.
Yeah.
I did, you know, I think I have like 50 or 60 concepts posted. That's like maybe 5% of my work that I did for the game.
Oh.
Yeah, it's
okay.
very
What was the rest?
Like taking a screenshot from the game and doing quick scribbles, making a ton of sketches, making like basically a lot of bullshit that you would normally never show, you know? Like where
so like the dirty stuff that
has
a function for the director but doesn't look pretty.
Yeah. Imagine you take a screenshot and spend maximum of 5 minutes on it. You would never post that, right?
Right.
You wouldn't ever do that. So.
Yeah.
Because then the image of perfect artist shatters. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
For you, it's so different, huh? Because like you are, you know, it's a very interesting approach, or it's a very interesting path that you've chosen, and I think it's a very cool path because you started the channel, and it grew. I mean, it grew, right? It's one of the biggest 3D channels out there on YouTube. If I search for any bigger, I don't think there's any bigger channels. 3D
I don't think there is. Yeah. I think it is the biggest. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's what I tell people.
There's quite a few like really large painting channels, artist painting channels. My friend Ross, he blew up. I remember having a art cafe with him when he had like 5,000 or 6,000 followers. Now it's like almost 1 million or something crazy like that.
Yeah, his is crazy.
I love that guy. It's the energy he has. Like, oh my god, like I wish I had that energy myself. I feel like I'm a really old man.
And he's still like really excited about it, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Like, whereas as some older veterans of the industry are usually not so excited.
I think it comes with age and kids, you know. They drain you.
That's what's in my future.
It is.
Yeah, I'm gonna be drained out.
But what I was trying to say is, I hear this argument that in order to teach, you need to be an expert. And every single book I've read about, you know, let's put it, making it, whether it's, you know, your typical inspirational book that is going to, you know, inspire you to become a better person, or a book about teaching or about business, marketing, any of those things. Every single one of them says that if you're an expert, you're probably not going to make it. because you're going to be
Right.
very deliberate about details, and you'll think that even the most mundane things are too easy to teach or are pretty obvious for everyone around there. I'm not gonna say how to make a brush because I mean it's
Right.
pretty obvious, right?
Right. Yeah.
And then you get those comments like, where do I find brushes? Where do I
Yeah.
find this?
Exactly.
What is viewport?
Yeah.
I don't understand what's viewport.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
it's very,
There's definitely got to be some truth there. Like
Yeah.
do you follow Tim Ferriss?
oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, that guy. He had a book. I don't know if you read it, The 4 Hour Chef, which was basically a book about learning, like how to hack your way to learn something faster. I think the title was a bad title, 4 Hour Chef. It was like around like him trying to learn cooking in the fastest route. But yeah, anyway, there was a part in it which stuck with me. It's like if you wanted to become a bodybuilder or like I don't know, good fitness, let's say, like tone up, lose weight. If you went to like the world's best bodybuilder and asked him like, how do you do it? He's going to say, well, you got to check your cortisol level and make sure that you're eating a protein of this percentage, like things that's so technical and so not what you need to hear.
Yeah.
And yet that's
Let's
what
start
all of
with
us
the
do.
carbo loading.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Like we go to the pros to learn things when actually oftentimes the pros are at such a level and at such a stage that they can't actually think back to what it was like to be a beginner and the information that the beginner needs to hear in order to make their first steps. Yeah, that's something that stuck with me. Anyway, I don't know. I think I cut you off.
Yeah, there's a couple of points to it for sure. One thing is, I have school. We release courses. We teach. I hope you're familiar with Learn Squared.
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah, and like we get a lot of requests like, hey, like we'd love to have this guy, and we'd love to have that guy, and you can tell from the first conversation with an artist, and a lot of artists are that way, that oh my god, like getting him to teach anything, it's going to be hard. It's going to be really hard.
Yeah.
Because it's just like the assumptions, and I had this problem myself when I was making my first classes, and I had these discussions with Ash all the time, like because he was making his class, and I would watch first few chapters like, I don't understand what you're doing there, and we just have to go back and re-record it, because like this is pretty simple. It is for you, it, I don't. Like I'm learning it for the first time, but there are folks that are amazing at it. They're professional, and they're pretty cordial in explaining how things work. And I think if you just start with the mindset like you're talking to a 5-year-old child,
No,
you're going to be in a good spot, because then you can imagine, okay, I have to go and break it down into simple levels. Or you put like the sort of pre-requirements saying, this is not for beginner, like this is more advanced course, like it's required for you to know about this and that.
Yeah.
But my point was this, that I hear this discussion about experts, there's a lot of artists that go up in arms and saying like, I hate when this young kid or this guy starts teaching because blah blah blah. It's like he doesn't know shit, he's teaching the wrong things. But the more I delve in the industry and knowing what the teaching is, and especially like when you have a kid, the thing about having a kid is you don't know how to raise a kid at all. You can read all the books you want, but unless you have the experience, how you build your skill, you have to have experience. Right. So unless, and you're going through it as well, unless you have that experience, you really don't know what you're doing. Right. So you still have to do it. And I think when you look at that, when you look at teaching, as long as you're open and trying to improve all the time, eventually you're gonna get good, and like really good, right? So it's really interesting because not a lot of people, especially in the art industry, are thinking that way. I think it's opening up, but I don't think a lot of people think that way. And oftentimes,
think what way, sir?
the way that, you know, you don't have to be an expert to teach. That's what I'm saying. Like an expert in a way where, you know, because I'm referring to your beginnings. You just decided, hey, like I'm learning Blender. How about teaching it? You know?
Yeah.
You weren't like this veteran working in the industry for 20 years. Like, let me shed my golden knowledge. You know how it's done. It was just like, I fucking love the software. Let's just go. You know.
Yeah.
It's really cool. You know, I was
gonna ask actually the learn squared. I was curious, how do you broach that problem? Because it's something we're thinking about with Polygon is getting experts to come in and, you know, teach training courses.
Right.
But the big challenge I've always had is like, there's so many courses that I've bought and then I start watching them, and I can't make it through like part 1 because the teaching is so bad. Like it's so, as you said, like they're not explaining things because it's not even on their radar of what they need to talk about. They're just skipping things that they think are obvious, but it's actually the one thing we need to know. You know, so with your course, how do you ensure that the content is, like the teaching is good?
Well, if you would ask, and by the way, people don't do that. Don't go to DMs of our instructors asking this question. But if you would ask the instructors that were with the platform on the very beginning, they would probably say like, yeah, it was pretty fucking difficult to make the course.
Oh, really?
Because we started with the preposition of we wanna build equality, and you know, somewhere along the way we'll make mistakes, and you know, things will happen. You know, we're gonna have some issues here and there, maybe some errors, maybe some of the materials not gonna be up to standard. I think we have enough reputation. I really hope so. We have a reputation of having a really good quality of content. But yeah, but if you've learned, it's just like it was a learning process. Like if you would tell you how long it would take to make a lesson when we started versus what we figured out along the way, you would be surprised how much of a difference in time, and how much time our teachers are actually spending on making the courses. You know, because we figured out sort of the flow. Like, okay, we start with this, then we talk, we go through sort of like the checkpoints on making sure that the end product is not omitting anything.
Right.
But it wasn't like that in the beginning. You know, it comes with experience. You know, I could ask you the same thing. Like, how do you build a channel to grow that way? You know, and you would say it's pretty obvious. You just do those few steps, and you do them over and over. And if you make mistakes, you learn from them, and you apply the changes. Right. That's what you did with Blender Guru, right? I remember watching like the very first few videos, like, yeah, the quality is different. It changed over years.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, it's a learning process, and if you guys want to start doing that, you know, there's two issues. One, getting people to teach, like really good people, it's like the biggest enigma for me, because I have a lot of I know a lot of artists that we are inviting personally, so for me it's very easy to talk with them, but even then it's not an easy task to get things going, you know.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, it's a really weird thing. Artists are, I think all of the artists, including myself, are just a little bit autistic, just a little bit, you know, a little bit of like, you know, a pinch of, you know, a pinch of autism, a pinch of Asperger's.
I think you definitely
ADD.
have to be like focused, like to be able to sit and like box yourself in and work on something for. I think it's the sort of environment where those qualities, I don't know if qualities is the right word, but introverted, let's say, the qualities of an introvert might excel.
Yeah.
than an extrovert. Like I think if you were like to do a podcast where you're interviewing, let's say, athletes or bodybuilders,
Yeah.
maybe the discussions would be more lively than a podcast on artists. Let's say as a broad generalization.
Yeah, maybe. Although, you sometimes watch those interviews and they're so awkward. So awkward. With the athletes.
I know.
It's like, wow.
Yeah.
I think artists are the most awkward people. That's included.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yes, I guess for you, it's just like it was the moment you just had to figure out the formula and get a little help with the marketing to get that thing going. So what happened? You got the job and then just quit, like right away, or did you
Oh, the freelance gig. Yeah. No, I delivered. Actually, there was a funny story with that. I was living at home at the time that I did it at my parents' house, and we lived sort of like in the sticks, like in the bush, we call it, like very rural. And the internet was shit. It was really bad. And I had to send, was it like 1,000 frames in like EXR format, and it was a lot. It was a lot of bandwidth, and we were on like, this was like back in the day, I think, when maybe not. I was thinking like when you couldn't have the phone on at the same time as the internet, but it might have been a bit after that. But anyways, and I needed to get it to them by this certain deadline, and so I had to send it via mail. So they were in Sydney, I'm in Brisbane. Mm-hmm. It's like a 2-hour flight, let's say, and so I put it on a disc back in the disc days, put it in the mailbox, and sent it off, told them that I sent it. And then I came back the next day. I came home from work, and there was my envelope sitting on my desk that my parents had delivered to me. And I looked at it and I'm like, what the hell? Why did it come back like a boomerang? And I read, and I had stupidly written my own address in the to field. I'd sent it to myself. I think I wrote their address on the other side, the return address. So I wrote it to myself. I mailed it to myself. And, the ultimate facepalm moment.
Did you get an angry phone call?
I had to call him up. I'm like, look, man, I mailed it to myself. And there's like this pause on the line, and the guy goes, oh, shit. Thankfully, that like, I just started uploading, and remarkably, it actually finished uploading in time for the deadline, Friday afternoon deadline. But I mean, not exactly a ringing endorsement for me after that, I'm sure. So yeah, that was my first gig. It was stressful having that whole experience, but also it just wasn't even fun. I wasn't making the fun stuff. It was like the smoke in like the background of this little tire commercial. You know how it is.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is actually how it is. It's not the glamour that I thought it was. And that was one job, So I shouldn't generalize the whole freelance industry based on that. But that's the story I keep telling people. So yeah.
That makes sense. It's pretty true. Like you figured it out like right away almost. That doing work for yourself is kind of the best deal. Kind of is.
It's fun. Yeah. It's a lot more. I think of it like this, right? Versus like doing something by yourself versus working for a company. It's like, I feel like when you're working for yourself, you have ultimate control, obviously. But the cons are that you basically are in full, everything is your fault. Like it's a responsibility thing.
Oh,
like if you're earning X number, like say you're only on like 20,000 a year or something, whereas you previously had a job where you were on 80 a year, well, that's your fault, right? The marketing is your fault because you didn't market yourself properly. You didn't negotiate your prices properly. Like everything is your fault.
Yeah.
However, you no longer have a ceiling on how much you can earn either. So if you do a really, really good job, then you can earn multiples of what you were earning when you were working at a studio.
That is true.
But at a studio, you would have stability. You would have a paycheck, steady income. You wouldn't have any dry periods. So there's pros and cons, and I think it's not like some people. I would recommend them to just get a job at a studio,
Yeah.
because some people just they like it. Like there's, I don't know, a friend of mine that works at Pixar, and he said like some people have just been there for life. They married someone at Pixar. They're raising kids together at Pixar. It's like that's just what they do, and they don't have any dreams of working outside of their department. That's what they do. They go to work and they do a tiny piece of the movie, but they enjoy the work.
Yeah.
Whereas my friend had very high ambitions. So after 3 years, he got so sick of it that he decided to quit and go off on his own. This is Colin Levy for people that I know who I'm talking about. The director.
Yeah, rings the bell.
Yes. Yeah. He was on Ash Thorpe's podcast once.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's just a difference in traits, character traits. Not everyone is built to do that.
Yeah.
Peyton Zana is a good friend of mine. I met him he joined Naughty Dog when I was there, and he's still there. Like, he doesn't think about changing it. It's just like, yeah, it's cool, works for me.
Yeah.
I asked him like, hey, you can go freelance, you can do this, you can do that. Yeah, I can just do that also, and then chill out and not think about those things. Yeah, it's not such it's not cut and dry. It's definitely not.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things to consider. Like one of the most obvious ones is finding a job. You don't want to throw yourself into a market without having that. Without being hireable, basically. Like if you're not hireable and you're deciding that, hey, like I'm gonna quit my full time and go freelance, well, good luck. If you get calls, that's gonna be great.
Right. Oh, you mean like if you're like say a student and you don't have the skills yet?
Or even if you're already in the workforce, there's so many artists in the workforce that they are not gonna get hired. They will have.
You think so? Like as a freelancer?
Let's put it this way: they will get hired. I think majority of, and I might be wrong about this. I'll concede if someone tells me otherwise. I'll concede and say I'm completely wrong. But my impression is knowing how many artists are out there, people that are working in the industry, and how the ratio between the jobs created and jobs available for artists versus jobs or versus the amount of artists that are out there. Not everyone's gonna get hired, and usually it's only, I feel like I always felt that way, that the top 5% of artists are the people that have no life. Basically, they just threw their life away. But those are the people that they don't look for work. They don't need to. The work comes to them.
Yes.
And then you have the 95%.
Like Vitaly Bulgarov, he's never gonna need to look for a job.
Exactly. Vitaly is. I mean, he's not a human. Let's begin with that, okay? Let's start with that. He's not a human. He's a robot.
Yeah.
I think he is. Yeah. He is Skynet, but he's just disguising himself as a human being. That's basically what's happening there.
Sending out clues of his inner workings. This is who I am inside.
But yeah, most people want. You will get jobs here and there, but it's not gonna. A lot of people have struggled with just keeping it consistent, and making a living. Like, I think you can make a living most of the time. If you're working hard enough, you will make a living. But then just being a little bit beyond paycheck to paycheck, it's not easy. I would say it's really, really hard.
Let me ask you a question, because I know, like looking on let's say ArtStation, because that's where everybody goes. Like, there's we'll call them the superstars, right? The people that you would recognize by name, like yourself, Vitaly Bulgarov, Ash Thorpe. There's people that you would recognize, and they work in the industry. They have a job at a studio, or they are freelancers like yourself, and you recognize them by name. But then you look at the employee figures of a place like Blizzard, and there's 2,000 people working at just Blizzard alone. I think there's another 1,000 at Riot. There's, and yet I could only list, I don't know, 20 odd people, maybe that I these names that you recognize.
Right.
But these 2,000 people, they've got a job, and they would have a portfolio, probably on ArtStation somewhere, but it's not really getting much exposure or work. I would imagine, this is a hunch, it's either two ways. One, they're not actually that interested in their career or their portfolio, and that's why they don't bother posting stuff on ArtStation. They're just like, it's a job, whatever. And the other thing would be, maybe they do have a whole collection of stuff, but they only share it when they apply for a job or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, which I don't know. I guess I'm just curious. Is it that, let's say for example, like Blizzard went bankrupt. Blizzard goes bankrupt, and those 2,000 people are out of work. Suddenly, flooded in LA, artists everywhere looking for jobs. Like, what percentage of them do you think couldn't find work easily?
I don't know. I don't want to say numbers because I just don't know. I know when there were bankruptcies in the industry, and there was quite a few of them.
Yeah.
I would hope most of the people got the job quite quickly. Yeah. I would say the ones that were like really good, I would say like the 5% where they were already somewhere else. They knew ahead of time, maybe they just figured it out by just the vibe of the place.
Yeah.
But if not, then they probably wouldn't have problem, because like if you're so good and people know where you work, then it's not going to be a long time before a recruiter is going to reach out. It's just like impossible, especially like for bigger companies like Riot Games or Blizzard. Even though they are not listing that they're looking for people, if there is like a golden goose or a unicorn out there, they're gonna snatch him or her. You know.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
You know, a lot of people just don't care about social media. It's just simple as that. And
yeah, that's true.
The market was there before social media. You know, the gaming started way before Facebook was ever invented. Where you only had HTML websites and you would just send a link to your portfolio. I think it's the industry is pretty much a meritocracy where really what matters is your work. That's really the number one thing. And how popular it. I would argue that the more popular you are, especially if you're very outspoken, can be something that will prevent you from getting hired.
Right. Yep.
Especially now, in this day and age, where I feel where there's so much outrage over nothing that it's just, why risk? You know, why to risk something? And you hear.
You mean like, why would a company want to hire somebody who is maybe too active on social media, and might say something that represents the company badly?
Yeah. That's very, very new. That's a very new thing. When I was working in the studio, I don't think that was ever an issue. But now, most of the contracts, no, not most, but I see contracts where, and that's even in film, where they just blandly say that that you're responsible for what you say on social media, and that can get you fired. You know, like right away. So it's not. People say, "Oh, it's a private thing." It's actually not. If you're messaging someone in DMs, right? If you're messaging someone privately, that's a private message. If you're posting something on Twitter or Facebook, that's a public message. It's not a private thing anymore. You want to think it's private because you're doing it on your own. You're doing it, you know. I'm not doing it at work or whatsoever. But you have to think of that. You know, if you do something really bad, you're probably gonna take the consequences of it, you know. But going back to your question, a lot of people just don't care about posting. They just care about doing the work, and they
probably a good thing. Probably.
You know,
probably getting more done than the rest of us, actually.
Oh, yeah, easily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, there's a book. It's called "I'm Writing a Book." That's what the book's called, and it's full of tweets of authors tweeting about writing books that they're not writing.
That is funny.
At the coffee shop, got my cappuccino, about to sit down and start writing a book. It's like, write the book. It's funny.
Yeah, people who say they're writing a book, they usually don't write it. Don't write at all. They just say they're doing the busy work, not the work itself. You know. It's so funny. That's
what do you think? Have you read the book? What's it called? The Art of War? No, War of Art. I always get them confused.
No.
The War of Art?
No.
By Stephen Pressfield. That's a great book. Talks about, like, if anybody has, like, writer's block or, like, creativity block or something.
Mm-hmm.
That's, like, my go-to book that I recommend people.
Interesting.
What's your philosophy for, like, an artistic block? You just can't get anything done.
See, I'll start with this. Before we started, I said this interview is going to turn into an interview of me.
Yeah, and look what it is. Well, that was my intention.
That's funny.
I tried to get you when I was in LA and you were too busy.
There you go. You have a chance to interview me on my channel.
I'll get him now.
We'll go back to the Blender thing. But I'll answer your question. I've went on a binge of books, audiobooks, self-help books, like all of that stuff, way back, like a couple of years ago. And I've read, I think, 20 or listened to at least 20 or 30 easily.
Yeah.
But one thing I've learned over time, I've learned many things not from those books, but those books helped me to find some patterns that are repeatable, and they are pretty much universal for how you develop and how you think about. I think what helps the most is getting a little bit more interest in psychology. Like, once you understand human psychology just a little bit, like just how the brain develops, and you will see it when your kid grows. First few weeks they don't see shit. They just see a feet away and everything else is blurred. They don't recognize the depth. Everything is like a 2D painting for them for first 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
They start to understand depth when they're like 3-4 months. So you see those things we take for granted that they have to learn and develop. That was like, for me, it was like a really interesting moment, like an epiphany. Like, wow, like I see this little thing growing, and there's a lot of things that I'm learning about it, and it's my assumptions about life, that this is supposed to be that way or this way, or that's how we work and that's how our brain functions and all that kind of stuff, were wrong, because now I see firsthand that those things have to be developed and learned and blah blah blah, right? So that started my sort of endeavor into psychology, just to understand the psychology. And I think the most I've learned two things. One, self-help books are great if you're very much like the person who wrote the self-help book. If you're not, it's useless. It's pretty much useless.
Wait, meaning it's only helping the person who wrote the book?
It's only helping. It will not change your life unless you think in the very similar channels as the person that wrote it.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
And so, if you read enough of those books, you will find enough different personalities giving you life advice. And all of them say different things, right? One person will say, work really hard, long hours. The second person will say, don't work hard, don't work at all. And it's like, what the fuck? What am I supposed to do, right? Work smarter.
Yeah.
No, don't work smarter. Like, the hard work, labor is where it's at. It's like, well, what the hell? What am I supposed to do then, right? You guys are saying like completely opposite things. But then you will find those things that first and second and fourth and fifth author said, and they're pretty much the same thing, right? You will find those little nuggets where, okay, yeah, everyone is pretty much on point with that. They don't argue that this is what you're supposed to do, right? So I think that's one of the things I've learned about books and reading books. But the second one was, I watched a couple of interviews, and just knowing a little bit more about psychology of how humans behave and all that. There was this very interesting interview that really resonated with me and made a lot of sense. And almost answered my everlasting question of, hey, I really want to be motivated and how to, go over the creative blocks and that kind of stuff is, what, the way we learn the bad habits is a gradual sort of progression. Never goes from really good to really bad. It's just you learn a bad habit over time. Let's say you work 9 to 5, you're tired, you go home, you sit in front of TV, right? You do it once, you do it the next day, and the next day. So that's a habit, right? You do it enough times over months, that's a lifestyle.
Right.
And
yes.
then, every time, that feeling when, let's say hypothetically you want to go to the gym, like, oh, it's going to be a leg day, or I'm going to go, work out, or I'm going to go running, or I'm going to go to jiu-jitsu or whatever. And then there's this little devil sitting on your shoulders and like, you don't really want to do that today. Just postpone it till tomorrow. Just do it tomorrow.
Right.
There's nothing going to happen. It's just one day,
Right. Yeah.
In reality, it's basically your brain reaction to something that is uncomfortable or a change. The saying of my New Year's, in New Year, January 1st, I'm going to the gym, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that, and like the gym is packed for like first 2 weeks, and then it just dissipates, and pretty much a month later it's back to normal, right? It's because people hate doing changes. Your brain hates changes. We hate that. And whether it's a negative or positive, we just hate the change. But once you
I don't know about that. I think
I'm saying,
if you're in a shit situation and then you change to be a good situation, I think you'd like the change. I think you
would only if
pain.
Yes, but there's a reason why there's depression. There's a reason why a lot of people just don't make it. Is because they don't get enough. In my estimate, a lot of people just don't get enough push to actually break the pattern. I think a lot of people aim too high to break that pattern. I heard this saying that aim for like the lowest denominator that will change your life from today to tomorrow. Not beyond that. So you find the lowest thing that you can do now that's going to be positive.
Yes.
Like that'll be better than what you're doing now. And start with that.
Yes.
And then once you do that, do it all the time. Because if it takes no effort to do it now, then it will take no effort to do it later down the road. And that's why that way you train your brain that this is becoming a pattern. You have synapses in the brain. They connect really fast. But in order to have a skill, you have to have enough of those connections, right? And that's how basically brains are built. So you build those connections.
I think there's definitely because like what you said, like conflicting advice. Like some people would hear that and they'd be like, "Oh, that's terrible advice," because then you're just setting yourself up for like low standards.
Right.
Like no one's ever going to get to Mars by setting themselves a tiny goal that they can hit today. But it's like you've got to think about the context or the person that advice is intended for.
Yes.
Because for the person that is depressed and has depression, like I can't remember where I'm trying to think of it, but like it might have been Jordan Peterson or something. But it was like he's a great guy. Love his thinking. I just promoted one of his tweets on Twitter and I got a bunch of backlash, so that's fun. It's a fun. He's a political dude. But anyways, he had this advice that was like, if you've got, like let's say somebody's got a messy room, right? Mm-hmm. And his advice is like, clean your room. But like, I think it might not have even been him, but it was like, that is such a huge goal to somebody who is so depressed they can't do anything, that you're just going to be beating them over the head by saying like, how come you can't clean your room? Come on, it's a simple thing. Clean your room. If someone is depressed, their brain is not functioning in a very good way that's going to help them. Yeah. But like if you told them like, for this 1 week, like in your desk that is like covered in papers and dirty cups and horrible things, this little circle, this little radius of like 20 centimeter radius thing, can you keep that clean for 1 week? That's all you got to do.
Yeah.
1 week. And anytime something lands in that circle that's not supposed to be there, you take it out. Can you do that for 1 week? And they're like, of course I can. It's like almost like insulting. Like, come on, I can do that.
Yeah.
Yes, I can. But that does a huge fundamental shift for them because they feel as though they have control over that. And it's something that is so small that getting started in it is not hard to do. And I thought, oh yeah, there was a guy, what's his name? He's a producer that works with like Eminem and Jay-Z.
I know who you're talking about, but I don't know the name. I don't remember the name.
Rick Rubin? Rick Rubin?
Might be.
Is that his name?
I can't remember. There's so many. Look, there's so many names that you have to remember these days that it's just impossible.
Yeah. The Gandalf of hip hop, Rick Rubin. Big,
there you go.
white, bushy beard. He had it was an interview with Tim Ferriss, and he was talking about, he has some rappers that he works with that feel like they have writer's block, and they can't write the lyrics for their song. And so he said to them, like, I want you to go home, and then I just want you to write one word of your song. Can you go home and you don't have to do the whole thing. All I want is just one word. Can you do that? And again, the same thing, like, come on, of course I can.
Yeah.
And then they come back with the whole lyrics written the next day, you know? So that advice, yeah, like setting a small thing for somebody who's stuck and their gears are, you know, grinding, I think that's good advice.
Yeah, you know, that's one of those things that when you read a lot of self-help books and, you know, motivational speakers and whatnot, that's one of those patterns that repeats, is that in order to achieve something, it's not going to happen overnight. It has to happen in increments, you know? And there might be many reasons why those increments going to just multiply suddenly, and then you're sort of like semi-successful in that very moment. That can springboard you to even more. But if you believe in, like, let's say, law of attraction, if you believe in the fact that those small increments just will change your life in a positive way, you know, think about how happy you are if something happens and it's better than it was, right? It just makes you happy. You feel that achievement of creating something and being happy about it. That motivates you to do different things all of a sudden. You know, you get the rush of energy to do those things. But if you're like, the lowest denominator is easy enough so that you know that every day, no matter what, you can do it, you're never going to fall back, and that denominator is going to keep raising over time. It's always going to happen. I was listening to Rogan, sort of like to almost prove the same point. He had one of the best MMA coaches in the world, for Asahabi, and he surprised Joe by saying, like, you should never train to a point in which the next day you're gonna be sore. You should never do that. It's okay. So he said it.
Conflicting advice.
Why?
Yeah.
He said why, and he's training like the best of the best, right? He said if you're in a, and it's related to MMA specifically, but I think it applies to a lot of things. If you train for a fight and you're in a camp, right? That 4 or 5 weeks before the fight, yes, you're gonna train hard. You're gonna get destroyed. But once you're out of the camp, there's no reason for that. You know, what happens if you train really hard and you're sore and you cannot go to the gym that next day? That means you're gonna go. Let's say you work really hard. You go and do it 3 times a week, right? That's I think that's an average for, like, if you want to stay healthy, you go to the gym like 3 times a week, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say you're gonna spend an hour on those 3 days, right? An hour each. That's 3 hours of the gym. But then you're exhausted on the other days, right? Now, what if you spend an hour in the gym, but you wouldn't go so hard? You wouldn't train to your maximum, right? You would say one day you would do 20 reps, then you would have a day off, and then you would do 20 reps and day off, and so it's 60 reps over a period of a week. Whereas if you don't train too hard, if you make the 20 reps but you make breaks, like I'm gonna make 10, just wait, relax, make another 10, maybe go to the gym next, in a few hours, do another 10, and do it every day. You're not gonna be exhausted. You're not gonna be exhausted. You're not gonna be having soreness, but you'll do 30 reps a day, 7 days. That's
But isn't the pain and the being worn out, like where the growth comes from?
Well, I don't know. I guess for bodybuilding specifically, maybe. But there's
maybe his advice was just MMA. Yeah.
But there's a lot of research that's been coming out. I'm just like generally interested in what I hear about different kinds of research. There's always some research that comes out, but the most recent studies that have been sort of like developed over years, peer-reviewed studies, are apparently that for the most benefits you're gonna get from volume if you work out, and then because you're just basically you're building muscles over long periods of time, so you're not going to have those ups and downs where you're like just training really hard and you're crashing, and then going to a point where you have injury, that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah. It's almost like a cardio approach to weight training.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's interesting.
I guess like for MMA specifically, let's take jiu-jitsu, because that's something I know about enough, right? To have at least an opinion. Is if you train, like if you go to jiu-jitsu, usually a class is like 2 hours, and if you train, you normally just drill, and then you have rolling sessions, and if you roll really hard and you do it like 5 times, dude, you're gonna be destroyed. You're gonna be puking, fucking shitting yourself. It's gonna be really hard. It's gonna be your worst time. If you go like really balls to the wall and just do like five rounds, like 3 minutes or 5 minutes, you're gonna be so dead. I'm not joking. It's like the most exhausting thing.
Really? Okay.
Oh yeah. It's like super intense because you're basically trying not to die. Let's put it this way: someone tries to kill you, and you're trying to survive, and you try to kill him. So that's like a really intense experience. But if you do that, there's next day you're gonna be too exhausted to even go 20% of that, right? So a lot of times, a lot of practitioners, unless they're dedicated to jiu-jitsu, they just go twice, maybe 3 times a week. Like if you go 3 times a week, you're like, oh my god, like you're really pushing it, because you're so destroyed. Your joint's gonna hurt so much, from all the extensions and the kimuras and everything. But if you go light, and the thing about jiu-jitsu is this: in order to get good at it, you have to have volume. Volume is because you have to teach your brain and your muscles to not to react, but to sort of like act based on what you feel should be done without thinking. When you look at tennis players or ping pong players, they don't react to what they see. They sort of like predict what's going to happen based on what they see and what their brain trained them to do. Because it's impossible to react to like how fast-paced it is. If you would want to think about what you're doing, you would never do it properly. So you almost get into that flow mode where you're not thinking, you're just doing. And the same thing is with jiu-jitsu. Like there's no way, if you're rolling with people and someone was changing positions and trying to pass your guard, and you feel like if you start thinking, you're done. If you overthink, you're done. Like they'll just like jump those hoops real quickly. Yeah. But over time, you sort of like get in not thinking mode. It's sort of like it just becomes like this flow. It's almost like playing chess, but without the timer, right? Like it's just like everyone's making a move in the parallel almost. Yeah. But in order to get there, like you have to do volume. Like volume is the key. So if you go 3 times a week, you're gonna have, let's say, 6 hours. But if you go 7 times a week, that's 14 hours. Yeah, that's 14 hours, right?
Yeah.
That's 8 hours more per week.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
In a year, you're basically you have at least like 200-300 hours of math time, of training, of repeating the same thing. 300 hours of, imagine like learning Blender where like every day you just like, I'm just doing, you know, I'm just learning, just creating, just having fun, you know, spending 2 hours a day, that's fine. And then imagine doing the same thing, but you're stressed out, your clients are calling all the time, get it fucking done, you know, you're so super exhausted.
Yeah.
The next day is like, I'm not touching this shit.
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
done.
Right.
Yeah, I think there's something in it, you know, but
I think
we
there's
went completely
a
off tangent.
right, but I think yeah, like you've got to like for somebody that's getting started in Blender, I would tell them like you've got to have fun. Like if you're just you've installed it for the first time, you've never used 3D software before, you've got to have fun at the start, and that's why I tried to make I made like a beginner series for YouTube, and I tried to make it like as low, like what do you call it? The threshold is as low as possible, like to get in. And we're doing like silly stuff in the first one. We set like a monkey head on fire, and like the whole series is like making a donut. And I try to tell people like, you know, just have fun with this, because I think back to when I got started, and if somebody had given me like a textbook, oh God, this is why I like so reluctant to recommend people to go to universities, because some universities will literally give them a textbook. Or they'll start them off with like theory about this is how light works and the light rays bounce off and GI ray tracing and yada yada. They'll just get straight into the weeds, you know?
Yeah.
And it can be death to a beginner. So my advice is always like, you gotta have fun. Because when I got started, that was where all my learning came from. Like the whole reason I got started in Blender, I started in 2003, so I was in grade 10, and I was playing like Need for Speed, and I was watching the car on the turntable, the little car showroom turntable, and I just thought, like, as I was watching, I want to make my own 3D car like that, a digital virtual car that is my own, and that was my whole motivation. That was my whole thing to get me into it, and I just followed that, and it took me a long time. I realized it was a very ambitious project to start with, the first thing to make a car. I think I only got to it like 4 years later. I finally started and finished that project, but it was like everything else. Like I followed a tutorial on making a mine cart that like goes along this track and through this mine, and it was like a fun thing, and it was through a whole series of fun projects that I learned it basically, and the pain came along the way. Like I would have this, I had this scene that I was making. It was like a car park, like an underground car park,
right?
And I was trying to make this short film with like flooded thing, and I never finished it, but I learned so much because I had this goal that I wanted to make, and I mapped it all out, and it was like university basically. Through this one project. So that's, having said that though, there are some people who do excel in academic structured environments, but for myself, I think having fun is a big part of it for me.
Yeah, I think it connects with what we were talking about too. Like if you go real hard about something, right, and you just get tired and exhausted, you're just gonna have a bad experience. You'll never want to go back, you know, or going back will be just dreadful. Like, man, like I have to do it again. It's hard. Yeah. But if you go to like the lowest thing, you know, like if I do that, I know I can do it every day. So let's just start doing that, you know, and then over time, and again, it comes back to the way our brains develop, you know. Over time, it becomes a habit. Like how many times, you know. I bet you're not 9 to 5. You're obsessed about, you know, your business, the things you do, and if there's a moment where you cannot do something that you have planned and that you've done every single day, you're gonna feel like shit, right? It's like, man,
Yeah.
I'm the laziest person. It's like 3 a.m. I haven't done it. I'm the laziest
Mm.
person. Dude, it's 3 a.m. You should be in bed.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's the same principle, you know, like you just you made that one thing that you've been doing over and over and over again a lifestyle, and now your brain's reaction, and the brain reacts apparently the same way to good and bad things, you know. Any kind of change is the croc part of the brain, you know, the fight or flight, where the change is something unpredictable is bad. I guess it connects to the evolution. Like if something changed in your environment that usually meant you're gonna die in a second because it's gonna be like a bear or like a freaking wolf or something, everything goes quiet,
Mhm.
you know shit's about to happen and you're scared because of the change, right?
Mhm.
Whereas now it's like our lives are so nerfed, you know. We find those
Right.
lower denominators for change, you know.
Yeah.
I don't
yeah.
know. I know there's a research that sort of like proves that to be a point where, you know, there's many researchers that say that if you repeat something over and over, it just becomes a skill over time.
Mhm.
There's,
Yeah.
you know, you can argue that you have Malcolm Gladwell's, you know, 10,000 hour, although for some it might be 1,000 hour because they're just genetically better. You know, and that's the reality. And for some,
Do you think
like,
that's true? Like for art, you can be genetically. Some people are
oh
born.
yeah, oh yeah,
You think so?
I think for everything.
Really? Okay.
I think so. I think if it's not going to be
By the way, I'm just gonna lower my desk. Everybody,
It's
I'm
okay.
going down.
going down.
Going down.
I mean, it's a multi-level answer, I guess, because nothing is simple. But I think, you know, I think what the things we do it looks so funny. You're approaching. I think when it comes to art, you know, it, there you have to have a specific personality to be a person that sits down, sits in front of a monitor, especially like if you live in California where it's nice outside all the time and you can go to the beach and enjoy life, and you sit in front of a computer and you get a suntan,
Yeah.
but from your computer, not from the sun that is outside. Like it takes a special kind of personality, you know. So I'm guessing,
Yeah.
you know, there's some personality traits that you develop depending on what kind of environment you're in and what what you're being taught. But there's also certain personalities that just come to you genetically. You know, the way your brain developed and the way your genetics develop you specifically. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it has it has an impact. There's
Right.
kids that are 18 and they already work in film or video games, the best studios, and they are fucking amazing at what they do.
Yeah.
If I was 18, I did that, I would be like, Craig Mullins? Pfft, come on. Caravaggio? Who's Caravaggio? You know what I mean? And then you have kids that just work really hard, just grind, and they get somewhere, but they never get to that highest and highest levels, you know.
Yeah. I think it's
there's the I would say
there's a lot that you don't see
has
under the
variety.
surface, though, right? Like maybe their environment that they grew up in was like their parents, you know, excelled in them to, you know,
right.
focus on the light and colors, or, you know, maybe their mom was really good artist to start with. You know, you don't know often, I think, the background, or also the like in the instance of somebody who's like just grinding away and never gets there, maybe they just never do deliberate practice, you know, focusing on their weaknesses. Maybe that's all this 18-year-old that is a
Yeah.
superstar.
But very much like you said, you know, some people you'd recommend them to work in the studio because that's probably going to be better for them because they don't care about, you know, they just don't have a personality to care. And that by itself will determine how much effort you're going to put to, like, let's say, learning new things or achieving something that everyone else thinks is just like, yeah, whatever. Like, why do you care, you know? There's, you know,
Right.
I look at my friend Ash, and I just admire his tenacity and his freaking dedication to details. Because, like, I work hard, I grind a lot of work. You know, I have to grind through to learn. But people think that people look at what I do, and you might say, oh, this guy is talented. This guy does this. I'm not trying to blow my blow air up my ass saying that, but you might think that I'm good. Presumably, I'm good at what I do, but that's like my 15 years of doing it every day for 14 hours, 20 hours. Grinding my ass off. To me, 2 a.m. It's the start of the day, and I'm waking up at 8 or 9. You just have to do it. I just think about. I cannot think about a day that is not productive. I mean, you get ups and downs. Obviously, you're gonna have months on end where you're just like, oh, I don't want to do shit. That happens obviously, but generally, that is my trait of character. I just do that, and I cannot go to a random person and say like, you have to work hard. Well, what do you mean? I said like, you have to work 14 hours. Like, there's no way I can do that. There are people that just cannot do that. They're just not wired that way. And I agree. A lot of that is based on how you were raised, what your parents were like. If your parents worked really hard, you're gonna get that work ethic. That's a pretty significant part of it. But I think genetics play a role. I don't think they play as dramatic role as in sports.
Right.
But they still do play a role. But I think at the end of the day, it won't matter because with the CRISPR and all the genetic modifications that are about to happen to humans, like I'm pretty sure China is already making superhumans. I think it's already happening.
Damn. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not gonna let you off the hook. I want to go back to that blender thing because we promised talk about it and we just went completely off tangent.
I'm just reading the live stream. I want to see what people are thinking. Do people think that there is? I hate the sun. Whoa. Oh, what does that mean?
I mean, it's interesting things. But what I wanted to ask you is, so you made. What was the moment for you where you made the switch and said like, I don't want to fucking work in the industry. I'm just gonna do this because this is fun. And
it was when I made that money from that product, because I realized that it was a potential, like you could actually make money by yourself, continuing to be in control of what you create, the art that you make, which was in my case was tutorials about car wheels and grass and things like that. So I could focus on what I wanted to do, but I could also make enough money to live. And I was like, haha, I cracked the code. I don't need to be a freelancer. I can do it all myself. And that was the time. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, it's, again, like you have that personality. There's a lot of people that just don't want to do that. But it's really intriguing. Like, when do you think, when you look at you're gonna look at your early stuff and you might say, oh my, like how many times you get that moment where like, hey, let me look at what I did like 5 years ago, and then you cringe like, God, what I was thinking.
Yeah.
But when do you think was the moment for you where you're like, you know what, I'm pretty good at it, I think I'm doing something right. Not just like financially, you're like, oh yeah, I'm making money, but and I can.
Oh, like when did I get like validation that?
Yeah, where you feel like, you know what, like the things I'm doing, they're actually good. It's not just like I'm making tutorials and making a living out of it, but it's actually impacting people positively, and it's like I have a testimony for that. Do you ever feel that way? Because that's also a question. You might be like,
if you
fuck
spend
that,
enough
dude,
time on
I'm
art
just making
station, you don't feel like you're ever any good.
Hey, newsflash, none of us do. You know what? I
know,
will
right?
be the first person to tell you that I feel horrible about the work that I do. But
Really?
Sorry, continue. Yeah, man. I think it sucks. Like, it's never there. It's never where I want it to be. And
Really? So you still have high tastes, and you think your work is not at the taste that you want it to be?
No.
Okay. Well, that
It's
means
pretty
you're always
fun.
going to grow. I think some artists don't think that they think theirs is like enough,
Mm.
and I think that's probably a reason why some people just stop growing. Uh, but yeah, sorry, validation. When did I feel like it was something good? I don't. It was probably. I mean, I think there was like a TV show, a German TV show. I don't know. They found me. This was like back in the day, 2011 maybe, and they were like, "Let's get this guy on, and to talk about 3D." And I was like, "This is so weird." I guess that was maybe the start. But I lived in Korea for 3 years, so I didn't mention this, but the big push that got me to make that ebook was I started dating this Korean girl who was living in Australia at the time. She was studying English, and we started dating in 2009 and fell in love. And then, oh, I know, right? And then she said, well, I got to head back to my country because I got to finish my English degree. And so we'd only been dating for 3 months. And so I Googled, like, how long does a long-distance relationship usually last? And it said, typically, on average, 3 months. And I was like, right. Well, so I bought a plane ticket, 3 months on the deadline, so that I would go and visit her. And then I started from that moment, like, writing a book. And by the time I published it, I had enough money to quit my full-time job, which was at the time I was a debt collector for Toyota. Yeah, and then I flew over, and we're now happily married, and we have a baby. How about that?
Great. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a true love story right there.
Yeah. Classic. The classic. Write an ebook and live in Korea for a few years. Yeah. So I lived in Korea for 3 years. Now we've moved back here permanently to Australia. But I think it was when I came back from Korea after the 3 years that people. Oh, what was it? It was like I had a meetup here in Australia. I met a few people, and they were like, "You're that guy, that YouTuber that makes that thing." I'm like, "Yeah," and it was like I didn't get this before. Like when I came back to Australia and I met English speakers, because when I was in Korea, no one watched my videos because it's all in English. When I came back, it was like, I don't know, it was a different sort of thing. But actually, the most recent one was when I went to LA in the trip that I tried to interview you at in November. And I held a meetup, a Blender meetup in LA. I put adverts up on Facebook and YouTube. I just wanted to meet Blender people in LA. And we rented out this room, and there was like 40 people all showed up. And a bunch of them worked in the industry. And there was this guy, and he came up, and he was I can't even remember his name. But he had a book. He gave me his book, and it was like sketches, this concept sketches, and he worked, and he was like this amazing artist, and he pulled me aside, and he was like, "Man, I just want to say I love what you're doing. What you're doing is so great for the industry." And he just had like words of praise, and I was like my mouth dropped. I'm like, "But you're in the industry. Like, you're so good." I'm just like, they say those who can't do teach. I'm teaching. I don't do well, you know. So that was when I was like, oh, okay, maybe like it's not just a crappy little channel anymore. Maybe there's something else to it. But
right.
I guess that would maybe be what you're talking about, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, look, you made something special there. So there's a reason why it's one of the biggest channels, you know. And you're pretty humble about it. Like, I met people that think that they're big and they act that way, and they just aren't, you know. And it's just like disheartening. I think, you know, humility gets you a long way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, don't you think it's like getting that moment of validation? It's like it's really special, you know. Man, like I did not expect that, and you know, this thing made my day.
It was, yeah, made my year even maybe. Went home and told my wife, I'm like, you wouldn't believe it. It was this awesome artist, and he was thanking me. It was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty
definitely
crazy when that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, every now and then I get messages from the like even just like the listeners of the podcast. Like, man, I've listened to this episode and I wasn't feeling that well about my work, or I was in the rut, I wasn't doing this, and then like you or Ash or one of your guests said something that just like pushed me in the right direction, and I thank you for that. So that moment, like those moments will make like all the efforts you're putting into this thing worth a while. It's like, wow, yeah, it's actually worth something, I like to think we started with that. I like to think that this show is just a conversation, I just meet and hang out with people I think are genuinely cool, or maybe I'm thinking that way, and then when I talk with them, maybe it's different. I don't think I've spoke on the podcast with anyone who was genuinely a bad dude or a bad girl. I don't think I've met anyone like that so far.
Yeah. Right.
Most of people are genuinely, nice as people, and some of them are just freaking legends in terms of like how nice they are to one another. Like if you would ever talk with John Park, for instance, it's like the nicest guy you will ever meet.
Right.
Like the most happy, nicest person out there.
I feel bad. I gotta Google this name. Sorry, John Park.
Yeah. Oh, you're gonna probably find like a musician first or something.
Yeah, I did. But I think I found his art station. Brainstorm School.
Yeah. He has Brainstorm School. Yeah.
Gotcha.
He's an artist that if you would work with him on the project, he will embarrass you. You will get a call from director or art director saying like, "Hey, is there any way you can do like 10 times more work? Because this is pretty embarrassing." You know what I mean?
Because John is just like shoveling it out.
Yeah, he's just like, oh, I'm just gonna do this sketch. It's gonna take me 20 minutes, and it's gonna look like your painting that you've spent the whole day on. Okay,
right.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I'm down for that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at his work. He's good. I'm curious, actually. Your work, you got a mix of 3D and 2D, right?
Yeah.
It's a bit of So what do you define yourself like? What is your title? Your role title, maybe?
Oh, I'm everything. I don't know, man.
Generalist?
I don't think I could call myself generalist. I would say I'm a digital artist. Like that would be the easiest thing to say. But I also, I don't like to define. I stopped thinking about the definition of who I am in terms of like the title. Just artist is fine, or a designer, whatever.
Right.
Or just a creative person. Let's put it this way. Like as broad as possible. I don't like the labels, and I know a lot of people argue, and I used to think that way for a long time, that the labels are really important. I would just find a way to squeeze in that I'm a lead or fucking this or that. And it's encouraging to see like, oh, I was listed in the film as a lead concept artist. That's awesome, right? It feels that way, but it's in the credit for half a second, and it only matters when the film is out for a week, and then nobody remembers. Nobody cares about your title. It's the same way nobody cares about your degree. Literally no one in this industry cares whether you finished art center or not. If your work sucks, that it just sucks. That's it.
Right.
End of story. So I stopped thinking about the title, and I use obviously a title when I have a website and something, or ArtStation profile and whatnot. Mainly because, as you said, like there are some people that are in the industry that are still thinking in the very sort of like old-fashioned, let's put it this way, and they like to have the validity of what you do with the title right next to your name. So they by the first glance, they're okay, the guy does this, he's that, For the body of my work, I'm more of like a, I guess, concept artist, illustrator, consultant, designer,
right?
Just instructor, company owner, businessman. I'm terrible at it, by the way. but learning.
Really? How so?
I think most artists are bad at business. I think so.
Oh yeah.
Oh man,
100%.
how many mistakes I made with my businesses?
Yeah.
If I was half as smart as I am now, and I'm pretty stupid, bear in mind, as a business person, I would be in a different place right now with everything I've done
Right.
so far. But it's you learn. I think
It's a totally different skill set. Like
yeah, you
that
have to learn it.
you have to learn. You got to go to business courses. You've got to read business books, and it's like I just want to read art books.
Yeah,
Like that's why my YouTube videos ebb and flow. Like sometimes I just do lots of videos and then I do lots of business and then I do lots of videos.
yeah.
Because it's like you got to switch and it's like trying to combine two person's hours into one.
Yeah.
I don't know. Complaining about it. A
do you
lot of people
ever-
have those jobs.
It's like a pretentious question, but do you ever like when you have to wear that businessman hat, because you have to.
Yeah.
You know about business a lot. You probably know like way more than I do, but the first thing you learn is like outside of paying taxes and everything, it's just like the cost of business and the things that the fires you have to put down every day. It's like you're not prepared for that at all when you start a company, when you want to do something above just posting art and just building your brand. Let's put it this way in the fancy words.
Right.
It's just like, man, there is like a hidden fee for credit card payments that I didn't factor
I know,
in.
right?
What? Where's my
I
money,
know.
motherfucker?
You get burned so bad. I can
Yeah.
tell you some stories. I'll tell you one. I was in when I moved to Korea, the business, what is it? The government of Australia. Because basically, I had to figure out I'm going to live in Korea for a few years. Should I be paying tax in Australia or should I be paying it in Korea? So I spent some money, got a private ruling decision. The government read through my records and made a decision that I should be paying tax in Korea. So, no problem. I will close down my Australian business and then I will open up a business in Korea. I spoke to an accountant. The accountant recommended me a law firm in Korea that speaks English because that's important, obviously, because I don't speak Korean. Recommended me to them.
Most likely.
Yeah, and I spent $70,000 getting the business started because of the amount of emails that I had to send to them. Every email they read, it's like $500 here,
Yeah.
$700, $800
Lawyers.
here. Lawyers, because I was paying lawyer rates to start a business, like, and then I would get like a bill from them for like. I would learn on the way that like when you lodge tax in Korea, unlike Australia, when you lodge your tax on the day that you lodge it, you have to make the payment for the total amount of tax. And in my case, that was $110,000. I had to pay tax. I'm like, what? I don't have that kind of money just sitting around. And they're like, well, you got to pay it now. And like, because their English is sort of poor, they're like, you must pay it today. I'm like, I can't pay it today. And they're like, when will you pay it? I'm like, well, give me some options. What am I dealing with here? So I had to pay like interest on the missed, like not paying it on the day.
Right.
I just think back, like if only my government had let me keep my Australian business here, it would have just been so much easier.
See, for Americans, it's easier because no matter where you live, you pay taxes in the U.S.
And
if you-
I did read that the other day.
Yeah, and if you end up, hey, you know what? I'm living in Germany now, and I have to pay taxes in Germany. Well, tough luck, motherfucker. You have to pay taxes in both countries. Well, they have laws that, like, you have the credit, and, if you pay X amount of taxes elsewhere, then you don't have to pay those taxes. You don't have to pay the double tax, but then there's, like, a limit. So if you make a lot of money outside of U.S., you don't have to pay the double tax after all. It's, like, pretty complicated. But, yeah, you learn those things as lawyers, dude. Especially when you want to
You
start
learn it the hard
hiring
way.
people. Oh, my God. Hiring
Oh,
people?
yeah.
All the laws? Dude. That's why, like, you mentioned, like, what about living in U.S., That would be fun, like L.A.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you know what? There's one thing that no one knows about, and you learn when it's like okay, now you have to really pay. That's when you learn. It's the business tax you have to pay in LA City. You know, like you have to register anytime you do any work. You have to register yourself as a business person. You know, with the LA tax. And the funny thing is, like the way they keep the records is so messed up that they don't even know what they're doing. You know, as long as you pay.
Most
fine.
governments don't know.
As long as you pay, it's fine. But if they catch you, you're fucked. There's like many of those small things. You know, when you're hiring people, if you hire someone full time, you get like hit by so many regulations. You know, like now I have to pay this tax, I have to pay that tax, and I have to make sure that this happens and that happens, and then this and that. You know.
What about hiring them as contractors? That's what I do. We got about 20 people we're hiring, and they're all contractors.
Yeah, well, that's easier,
but
right?
They're all based over the world, but yeah.
Yeah, because it's like it's an expense by then. But if you want to hire someone in person, like that's why no one wants to hire in person. You know, it's much harder to find a full-time job than a freelance job. And even in the US, full-time job means that they can fire you on a day's notice. You know, it's not like.
Is that right? One day.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, hey, you're fired.
For no reason?
No, they cannot like terminate your contract without reason. They have to have a reason.
Okay.
Like normally if you're fired for no reason, then you can go to court and argue that there's no reason you should have gotten fired because you haven't done anything to justify that. They can justify that they're cutting costs, then that's one of the reasons, right? But they did have to show that that's the reason what they're doing. But just because someone doesn't like you, they just don't fire people, you know. But I guess they do, you know. You never know. And then they can say like, "Oh, we're cutting costs because it's just too expensive." You can find an argument. A good lawyer will find an argument, you know.
Oh man!
But you learn those things, and it's just like it's a really hard lesson for me. It was like and I've said this many times. If you're in the U.S., you better be a corporation. It's just the best way to deal with shit, you know. It's gonna mean you're gonna have expenses, but if you plan to do freelance work, just do it through the corporation. Just protect yourself.
Right. I mean, that's smart for anyone.
Yes.
You don't want to represent the risks that come with getting sued. You want to be part of an entity, and then they sue the entity, and then you jump out of the entity and go, haha.
Yeah.
I'm not involved.
If there's no wrongdoing, then having an entity is basically like a liability protection, you know. And you learn that because then they cannot go after your house, your livelihood, and everything, and that can bankrupt you. It can literally bankrupt you, you know.
Yeah, I mean, but that's why they exist. Like, otherwise, nobody would do business with anyone.
Yeah.
Like, I'm reading this book, Homo Sapiens, I think it is, and it's talking about like how successful, like how big that was, like creating the idea of an entity for human development. Because before that, like if you sold a wagon, like you made a wagon, then you sold it to someone, and then they pushed it down the road, and then the wheel fell off, and they broke their leg. Well, then you get sued, and now your life is ruined because you sold one wagon. Well, like no development was happening. Like nobody wanted to go into business. People would just be like, nope, I'm not selling anything to anyone. So then they created the idea of entities, and to basically take the risk. The business takes on the risk instead of you personally. So it's a no-brainer. You got to do that stuff if you.
It is and it isn't because most people don't do that. You know.
Oh really?
Oh, dude! If you make a poll among artists in the industry and ask how many of you actually work through the entity, or have plans to work through entity in the very foreseeable future, you probably see 80% not doing that at all. And that's not only this industry. I think it's most industries. It's really is.
Yeah. I guess you could argue, like there's less risk. Yeah, like I guess, like if you're an electrician or something, you're really opening yourself up to a lawsuit. Yeah. But I guess as an artist, it's like, what could you really be sued for? But you don't want to take on any risk.
I almost got sued for doing nothing wrong, dude.
What was it?
I don't think I can talk in details exactly, but there was this fallout with Digital Domain, and a lot of artists that worked with that company were threatened by collectors. You know, that their own money that they've rightfully earned. So it was not fun. I spent $8,000 saying I spent $8,000 with my lawyer to basically write back saying fuck off. I was basically like in the polite, you know, in the polite legal jargon, a fuck off letter.
Damn.
See, like if that went to, like, if any of that went to court, if something goes to court, you're fucked, because that means you're gonna spend at least $50,000 easily.
Well, that's the other suggestion I would recommend to people. I only just learned this the other day, that there is such a thing as indemnity insurance, and that if you're a business, you absolutely should get indemnity insurance, so that if you get sued, you pass it on to them, and they obviously have an incentive to do it at the lowest cost possible. So they typically pay the person out, and then they write it off, and it's problem solved.
Yeah, even without that,
hopefully,
you pay a fee of having a business. You pay for
it's the cost taxes. Of business. You're gonna get sued at some point anyway. So when it comes up and there's an $8,000 bill, it's like, yeah, but it's gonna happen. So
like
that sucks. I mean, we're really giving the worst sales pitch for like being a freelancer.
Well,
there's pros. Yeah.
I think there's cons and pros to everything, you know. Like, I just cannot imagine myself being in the office space anymore. You know, if it was my own office space, then yeah. But
speaking of pros and cons and living spaces, I want to get into LA.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so to give you the background, my business is Polygon, and we're looking to open up a studio so that we can hire artists to create basically an asset library for 3D.
Right.
You know, trees and cars and whatever, right? And I currently live in Brisbane, Australia, which is all right. A better, like, let's say this is a 4th tier city, Melbourne, Sydney, or that's sort of like a 3rd tier. Vancouver, Toronto, Seattle, maybe that's a tier 2, but LA is industry tier 1 standard. There's 267 VFX studios in LA and about 200 game studios in LA. There's about 10% of that in Melbourne, which would be the next closest place I would want to move to. And my advisor, he's like, you just got to, if you're a solar panel, go to the source. You got to go to LA. You live in LA. What are the pros and cons for the artist industry in LA?
Let me start with the cons, just to keep the negative flow, so then we can, you know, springboard it to the positives.
Go for it.
It's expensive as fuck here, dude. Let me ask you, what is the average, just as an average artist, what is your rent, let's say in Brisbane, for, let's say, an apartment, 1 bedroom, you know, nothing too spectacular?
I couldn't give you the exact figure, but I actually did a lot of research on cost of living, and it's basically 50% less than LA.
Okay. Do you think it's like, what, $1,500 for an apartment like that?
Like in the city? Oh, $1,500 per month?
Yeah.
That would be high.
Okay.
Yeah. So what is it in LA?
$1,500 would probably be Compton in LA.
Ooh.
I would say.
Oh, I don't know if I looked up prices the other day.
Maybe less than that. But so if you want to live in
oh, actually, hang on. Yeah, you're right.
If you want to be in a neighborhood that you're not getting shot at, or you don't have a gang activity, which is very few in LA specifically, you're looking at, I would say, easily 2,000, maybe 2,200 per month for 1 bedroom. And if you want to be in a really safe, nice area, it's going to be 2,400, easily.
Wow.
If you want to have a house in a really good area, like a house that's not a ruin, because a lot of places here, you know how it works here. A lot of places, there's some places that have like rent control, so people just stay there forever because they have like
Oh
the super low
yeah.
prices, you know, that they never
They put a
raise
cap
rent.
on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But basically, like if someone moves out, the place that was rented for like $800, now it's like $6,000. This happens a lot. They do like
Is that right?
They don't even bother doing renovations because like everything is so hot here, you know. Like
Oh
everyone
my
wants to
gosh.
get a good place.
The homeowner must be so happy.
Yeah, well, the prices are skyrocketing too. Like in West Side LA, which is it's not the safest, I would say, but it's like it's where it's at. You know, it's where everyone wants to be almost. Like let's put it this way. Not everyone, but it's just like let's put it the hottest place.
Like
you know,
Santa Monica?
yeah, like Santa Monica, Marina del Rey. You know, Venice is still sketchy, but like Culver City. You know, even if you
Yeah.
go even more south, like Manhattan Beach and Redondo, like you're looking at a really high living cost. You know, if you want to have a if you want to live in a house without neighbors, you know, it's going to be at least $3,000, if not more. So it's pretty
Yeah.
expensive. It's you know, and then you add up like all the other costs. You know, taxes. You have a state tax that's pretty high. There's just so many layers of expense that just you know.
You know,
layer
I
over
just
layer.
looked up what is Compton rental prices, and you are actually dead on the money for a one bedroom apartment in Compton. It's $1,475 a month.
Yeah.
You're $25 off, but that's
A lot of those
Damn.
places are getting gentrified, you know, but they're still fucking sketchy, dude. Still
Yeah.
really bad. You don't want to be in. Dude, there's this, really cool park. It's called Griffith Park, where you have like
Okay.
an observatory. When you are there, like you have a view over LA. It's like a really nice place, you know. And then
Yeah.
right before that, you have like a really nice neighborhood, really affluent neighborhood where a lot of like actors live as well. And one of those where actors live, or producers, film producers, is called Los Feliz. It's pretty fucking expensive. You go maybe a mile south, like mile tops, and you have MS-13 neighborhood. And MS-13 is like the gnarliest gang, you know. Yeah, you drive from like, because like to get to Griffith Park, and if you're going through the freeway, you're gonna have to go through I-10, and then probably take one of the streets that go straight north. You're gonna drive to like some really fucking rough neighborhoods, man. It's you know, during the day it's not bad, especially if you're just driving through, but
That blew me away, actually. Like, for people who haven't been to LA, like, people talk about, like, the sketchy areas, and I always imagined it would be like, you would feel it as you walk in, like a gradient, like 10 miles away is like a sketchy area,
Blocks.
and you would feel exactly. I was literally walking down the street in downtown LA, and there was like the hipsteriest hipster coffee shop selling friggin' mango smoothies with acacia and shit in it. And then, like, literally around the corner was Skid Row, the tent city with, like, crack addicts and, like, throwing needles at each other. Like, it was like,
it's the last
what?
place. Yeah.
What?
It's pretty fucking scary down
what
there,
was
dude.
frightening was that of course I didn't know the area. I felt like I was in, like, a safe place, and then I was suddenly not in a safe place, and there was no warning. And it was very, very frightening to me as an Australian, where our sketchy areas, we know where that is, and that is this area on the map, and you got to get to it by car, and you'll feel it as you get towards it. But this was like across the road. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, LA has a lot of places like that where you just take a wrong turn and then you get stabbed.
Yeah.
Or shot. You know, that happens too.
So that's one of the downsides is it's expensive.
Yeah,
it's violent,
pretty expensive.
maybe.
It's not really like if you live in a safe area, it's fine. You know, it's pretty expensive though. It's
Okay.
one of the It's not the most expensive city on earth, obviously, but it's pretty expensive to be here. If you go like to the, and then if the closer you're to the ocean, the nicer the weather is, the more shops you have, bars, all that stuff. But then like if you go to the valley, it's not that expensive in the valley anymore. But then the summer is fucking unbearable, like 90 Fahrenheit, 100 Fahrenheit, almost all the time. It's like you're basically in AC all the time. It's impossible.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's expensive. There's a ton of traffic. Like if you want to commute anywhere, there is a saying that anywhere in LA is an hour away. No matter how close it is, it's always an hour away or more, because there's just constant traffic, and it's getting worse. The pollution is bad,
the question is,
but it's not terrible.
Is it worth it? Is there something that you can only get in LA?
Okay, so if you're in LA, I'll tell you, if you want to work for a studio, obviously there's many studios you can choose from, right? That's given. But even if you just want to freelance, just the fact that you're local, and that all the film studios are there, all of them, they have branches around the place. When the production goes, they go to those places. They go to Atlanta, they go to Sydney, they go to Vancouver, they go to London. I guess London has a lot of activity as well. But the film studios, the actual producers, the directors, all of them are in LA. Which means that if you're freelance and you work in film, you're always going to start in LA. Always. Almost all films start in LA. And then if their production is set to go elsewhere, then they go elsewhere and they work in that place. But it always starts in LA. Especially like the union films, from the major, I think it's a major 5 or major 6, right? Major 6 film studios. All of that starts in LA, and then it moves on. Some of them stay for like months and then move on. Some of them stay for a couple of weeks and they move on, But all the production meetings start with LA. So being local, especially like if you want to get on the show, and if you want to be in a union, you have to be in LA. At least to get in a union. Like you have to live here. You have to be not in LA specifically. You have to be in California to be in.
Explain unions.
So unions is basically the guilds, the film guilds are basically so that it's changing. It's getting more lenient, but basically it means that if the movie is made in U.S., you're not gonna work in the movie unless you're in a union. So you have to be admitted, you have to pay dues, and then once you do that, then you can work in a film. Then you're on the roster, and they can hire you.
What does a union give them? Why do they want to hire artists in unions? I thought employers don't like unions.
I don't know how it all started. I don't know the history of it. I know it's just there. I think it's right now. It's basically it's there. Because people that work in the film, they just don't want to have a competition from outside. But a lot of producers don't like that. I feel.
Right.
A lot of studios don't like that either. But it's just a structure that's been there. I don't know the history of it. There are benefits of being in a union. Like you get free healthcare. If you pay dues, you get the healthcare, you get the pension plans. So there's some good benefits. Obviously, it means you have to work. Only get that when you work. If you don't work, you get nothing. But there are benefits of that. But a lot of films now are made outside of LA and outside of US. And if the film is made in Sydney, then you don't have to be in a union to work in the film.
Right. Yeah.
Godzilla, I think, was made in Sydney. Ghost in the Shell was made in Wellington, New Zealand. So
yeah.
I mean, obviously they're shooting in different places, but that's where the majority of production was, So in order to make it in films, you don't have to be in LA, but just the fact you are local, it just makes it much easier to be on a meeting. If someone calls you and they're interested in working with you, first of all, the time zone itself makes it easy because they can call you during the day and you're there. They're like, oh, there's Australia, what time it is? Are they already sleeping? That kind of stuff. So it's much more difficult to organize any kinds of meeting, and they are more scarce. Whereas when you're here, it's much easier because even if they don't call you every time, it's at least they know they can. That's like this comfortable feeling. of doing that.
Mhm.
So that definitely makes a difference. And then the fact you can
Is there a strong like community? Like, do you feel that you learn more as an artist because you're around good artists?
I think, like when you work in the studio, that's where you would be in the community. And I guess there are like meetups and hangouts. I don't go to those normally.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I'm not like a really that of a social person. Surprise, surprise. My friend Shaddy is telling everybody that I hate people, which might actually be true. um, but yeah, I mean it's easy to meet artists here. It's definitely much easier.
Yeah.
If you're local, it's much easier. But then everyone is working all the time, and it just so happened that you meet your friends when you're like in convention somewhere else.
Ah, right. Yeah.
I was joking with David Levy when I met him on THU last year at the Trojan Horse was a unicorn in Portugal. Like we were we're literally a street away, neighbors in Marina del Rey for like 6 months before I moved from there, and we never had time to meet. It was fucking ridiculous.
Oh
dude.
my gosh.
And then we met
That's
there.
crazy.
Because some people are social and others aren't.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely makes sense, like just for a meeting purpose. But I don't know, man. Like it's just a matter of, I guess, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
From business perspective, there's layers of how and what. There's
Thanks,
infrastructure here, obviously. So, I've never done business in a way where I'm selling a product that is not just a teaching product, right? But like, I'm selling like stock photos or, VFX photo, whatever that would be.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you for that to happen, and if you have to have a meeting with a studio that wants to buy it or not, or if just a phone call is sufficient enough,
Yeah, exactly.
So-
That's definitely one of the things I was like, hey, yeah, I'm sure it would be easier, like an easier sell for them if they could see like, oh, you're in LA, let's meet up, let's talk about it. But that's, is it worth the cost that you mentioned? I
Exactly.
was more interested in it for the point of like being able to find skilled artists who are very, world class at what they do. But something a friend said to me, he said like most artists in LA actually aren't loyal to their company. Like they move around a lot.
I think
Typically it's like a revolving door.
I think it's true for most studios and cities. As an artist, you kind of want to do, take care of yourself.
Right.
You always want to
yes.
do that. My position on this is, if you want to have an LA artist, it's going to be more expensive, but then you might get like the world class, right? Like the best.
Yeah.
But there's so many
yeah.
amazing artists that are not even here. They work remotely, Like in graphics design industry, most of my favorite artists are nowhere near LA.
Right, yeah. I guess it's,
elsewhere.
graphic design sort of a different, I wouldn't go to LA to find graphic designers.
And I guess for VFX specifically, like most VFX artists, majority of them work in studios, and most of the studios are in the major hubs, whether it's LA or London or, Vancouver, any of those places, then that makes sense. But, I mean, other than that, if you just, I feel like the industry is moving towards remote. I really
Is that
do.
right?
I really do.
So if people are listening and they're like in India and they're like, can I stay in India and
I
get
would
work?
say so, yeah. A lot of people get hired. I know quite a few people that would outsource their, like, the most mundane work that they have, like cleaning up plates and, like, hey, I'm doing a matte painting and I want to have a bunch of trees that have no sky. and they would hire a kid in India that would gladly do it because otherwise they're doing you can find artists in places that are not LA or in any major city, and
the costs are just
the costs are way lower.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't matter. Like if you just want to do that, you don't need like a professional to do it. You just need someone who will just sit hours on end and do it. It's a grunt
You don't
work.
need a world-class
Exactly.
artist.